All right, Shalom. Giving all honor, all praise, and all glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushai, Ba'ashem, Arachak Wadash. Double honors to the elder apostles and bishops of the great millstone that rule well. And as always, peace, blessings, and salutations until the hopefully like tabernacle of David scattered abroad across the four winds of the earth. And I just want to, do a follow-up response to the live that the apostle of Ramlab, and you have the beloved brother Kanap out of the Bay Area camp, and that they're basically going into these guys that was just on a platform where they were discussing about various topics, but the topic of who the Japhites are, and prophecy came up, and they try to link the so-called white man to Japheth, which is why the European, which is inhabited by the actual Edomites and not the actual people of Japheth, happen to be in power. So they try to make the link to Esau being in Europe to him being the so-called Japhetic people, which is totally erroneous. And you're definitely not of understanding in the spirit if that's what you believe and that's what you teach. But these are supposed to be men who are deemed as scholars. They done thorough research and read a lot of historical books, so they'll narrate and even put documentaries together using a bunch of scattered information, which some can have some truth to it. A lot of it can be misinformation. And if you don't have that discerning spirit to be able to decipher the truth from fiction, then that's how you get caught up. All right. And we know that the scriptures say no lie is of the truth. So if whatever it is you teach and have any lies mixed into it, then it's not really the truth. So guys like Ron Dalton and whoever else, these type of guys that, get these accolades and they're able to make these documentaries and write books and all that. The Lord ain't dealing with them. The spirit is not on them. All right. And the Lord's going to show that these guys are not what they hype themselves up to be. All right. The scriptures say he that if any man knoweth anything, he knoweth nothing as he ought to know. And Paul also said, he that is wise, let him become a fool that he may be wise. All right. And that's, you got to be willing to swallow your pride and, go back to the first principles. If any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of the Most High. Let me get, was that 1 Peter 4:11? Yeah, this is 1 Peter 4:11. It says, if any man speak, let him speak as the oracles of the Most High. If any man minister, let him do it as of the ability which the Most High giveth, that the Most High in all things may be glorified through Yahushua Mashiach, to whom be praise and dominion forever and ever. Amen. So you got to go back to, speaking of the oracles, which is coming from the word of the Most High in the Bible. That's what we go by, and that's what we ought to speak from. That's our ultimate source. Okay. And let me hit this one real quick as well. Hebrews 5:12, and it says, for when you ought to be teachers, you have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of the Most High. So you got to go back to the drawing board and understand that you don't know what you ought to actually know. Otherwise, you shouldn't be out there teaching. But you got a lot of, false teachers out there. Guys that's on the come up, guys that's using the Bible to, create a reputation, an image for themselves. They're using it as a hustle. And a lot of our people, they're being had and taken by these type of individuals just because they're able to speak crystal clear, because they're able to orate and speak very fair, But you got to be discerning, especially in these last times, because there's way more false prophets and teachers than there are true prophets and true teachers sent by Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And that's why there's a difference of the straight gate, all right, versus the wide gate. It says, and are become such as have need of milk and not of strong meat. And really, especially guys like Ron Dalton and these other figures out there, you even got that dude, a Prince of Power, he calls himself. And he calls himself, trying to, he's like in a podcast fashion, like DJ Academics, where he has these little discussions over with certain Israelite camps or certain Israelite leaders are teaching. And he tries to give his it's like his input and his belief and his opinion on certain matters and certain teachings. But none of these dudes have this the spirit. Now, the apostle and the brother, they're saying that these guys are retards, because it's like they're speaking confidently, but they have no idea how off they are. And if you was to go into these prophecies, which is the meat, some of these prophecies is like basically, going into deep waters. And if you're not learned, and if you don't have the Holy Spirit, you will drown. So these dudes, they go into prophecy and get drowned, now realizing that they need to come back to the shallow end and start over and start slow. Okay. So this scripture right here is on point, because it teaches you, don't go straight into things that you are not ready for. Learn the basics first. Go into the basic understanding, things that are more easier for you to grasp before you try to go into prophecy. Because if you're trying to identify Esau with Japheth, you're going to have to make that make sense prophetically. Daniel, the Lord gave him the vision, and he basically got to see the chronology of the different empires that would reign, that would have dominion on the earth at certain periods of time. So if you're going to link Esau with Japheth, then make that make sense prophetically. They like to go by geographical locations, as if nations don't migrate over the course of time, or like landmarks don't get removed, which the scriptures speak about that you're not supposed to remove boundary marks, landmarks, or borders. But Esau has done that over the course of time, through war, through colonialism. He's done it. They've changed the name of actual lands. And that's why you have what they call anachronism. What is anachronism? When you look it up, anachronism, a thing belonging or appropriate to a period other than it which it exists, especially a thing that is conspicuously old-fashioned. It says an act of attributing a custom, event, or object to a period to which it does not belong. All right, and we know that when Japheth ruled in the continent of Europe, it wasn't called Europe. Okay, which we know Europe goes back to Europa, a Greek goddess, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, we know that was the land of Japheth. All right, the land of Greece was known as Yawan. Let me get that. And we know that Yawan goes back to Japheth. He was one of the sons of Japheth. So they don't call the land of Yawan. They call it Greece now. All right. So anytime you see the word Greece in the Old Testament, Grecian, Greece, that's an anachronism, because back then it wasn't called Greece. That came later after the fact. So when you understand the time periods, it wouldn't have been named that back in his time when Japheth was in that land, because that was their inheritance. Genesis 10:2 says the sons of Japheth, or Yawapath, or Yapath, Gomer, which is modern day Turkey, and Magog, and Madai, and Javan, which is Yawan, and Tubal, and Meshach, and Taras. And let's look up Javan or Javan. And you see there in the Hebrew is Yawan. And it says from the same as H3196. So this is Hebrew. Effervescing, hot and active. Javan, the name of the son of Joktan, and of the race Ionians, i.e. Greeks, descended from him, with their territory also of a place in Arabia, which that's, separate. So Javan, Ionia, or Greece. So this is the reason why they'll try to link Esau with Japheth. But you can go into the Maccabees and you see how Alexander the Great, how he colonized, right? And really starting with his father. His father had smitten Darius, who was an actual Mede. He was of Japheth, if I'm not mistaken. And then you had Cyrus, that rose up when the Greeks, when the Medes was in power. Then you had Cyrus, who was a Persian, and that's how the Persians rose into power. But later down the line, you had a Darius, and he got smitten by Alexander's father. Let me go to that in the Apocrypha real quick. Yep. So this is First Maccabees 1:1. It says, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece. So this is another nation, a man of another nationality, who rose up and smitten a man who was king over this region of land. You see? And let's not forget, Persia, the Persians, they ruled over 127 provinces, from India to Ethiopia. So they had quite a jurisdiction over a great mass of land. All right. So because they ruled over as far as Ethiopia, did that mean that the Persians were Ethiopian? No, they just ruled over Ethiopia because it was their time to rule. And then when they fell to the Greeks, then the Greeks, took over. They ruled from down in Egypt, the northern part of Africa. All right, all throughout Europe, Syria. So did that mean that they were Syrian? And this is what Esau been doing. And like it says in Psalms 49, let's go to Psalm 49 and 11. And it says, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. See? So once they colonized, they changed the landmark, they changed the name of the land. All right? Because once you take a land, you do what you will with it. You set up the guys that the people in that region is gonna serve. You control the language, to what's gonna be the dominating language of that particular land, the culture, all that. So that's why, like when we read in the Old Testament, it uses the term Egypt. Egypt is Greek. So what was the original name of the land of Egypt? It was Martezarium, which goes back to one of the sons of Ham. So Egypt is an anachronism from Martezarium. So, these are just different examples that I'm talking about. So you can't just say, oh, Esau, the so-called white man, he got to be Japheth because he lives in a land where the Japhethites were given their inheritance. That's lazy work. But these guys, they're held as high-level scholars. They did all this research. They put that doctor in front of their name. And that's why Paul said, the Lord is not dealing with the wise of this world. The Lord make foolish the wisdom of this world. So guys like that, they would have to come up under teachers. They would need one to teach them again. You think they're gonna do that? No. Some of these guys you just can't really teach them. The scriptures say, you see a man that is wise in his own conceit, there's fools that are wiser than him. I think that's what Proverbs 26. Let me go here. Proverbs 26. And was it 12? Yeah, Proverbs 26 and 12. It says, seest thou a wise man in his own conceit? There's more hope of a fool than of him. Because this man that's wise in his own eyes, you can't tell him anything. He's already set in his ways. His mind and conscience is already seared. So you really can't teach him anything. All right. So, you just let these guys, you let them be. All right. And the Most High in due time is going to show that a lot of these guys, they're foolish and the Lord ain't really dealing with them. But Jake, they're going to go in the ways and seek after these type of individuals. Because the scriptures say that our people, they always been poor on judgment. They're destroyed for the lack of knowledge. So a guy like Ron Dalton and, Divine Prospect, these type of dudes that seem to be knowledgeable and intelligent, they can play on Jake's stupidity and being simple because of their ignorance. So going back to this point, you just got to know the history. All right, Darius, he was king over the Persians and the Medes. He got took down, and then the Greeks took over, but that was an Edomite. And how we know that this was these were a family of Edomites? It talks about how Haman, when you read in the addition to Esther, Haman is referred to as a Macedonian. And we know that Haman, when you trace him back, he went back to Agag, all right, which Agag was an Amalekite. Let's go to let's just type that in. So you see, when you just type in Agag, it's 1 Samuel, the 15th chapter, and this was supposed to be the man that Saul was supposed to clean him up. He was supposed to hack him up, but he didn't finish the job, and he was disobedient and didn't follow the instruction. So Samuel had to basically finish the job and curse out King Saul. You know, he was basically the mouthpiece for the Most High, and he cursed him out for not, you know, doing what he was supposed to do. But Agag, he was an enemy. He was an Amalekite. The Lord said in our law that the Amalek would basically be an enemy forever. That he would have war with them throughout generations. All right, so he wasn't supposed to spare Agag and none of the Amalekites. He was supposed to get rid of all of them. All right, so it would make sense that by the time we came into the Medo-Persian Empire, you know, you had Xerxes, and his right hand, his second in command, happened to be an Amalekite who was a descendant of Agag. Agagite. Esther 3:1. After these things did King Ahasuerus, that's Xerxes, promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, who was an Amalek. He was a king over Amalek, and advanced him and set his seat above all princes that were with him. And that's why the scriptures say in the Apocrypha, Sirach, the 12th chapter, that you're never supposed to try to set your enemy by you, which he didn't know that Agag, well, not Agag, Haman, he was a secret enemy. Because when you read Esther, there was a plot. There was a plot to, you know, basically set up the king to take him down so that he can be in position. Let's go to Sirach 12. Yeah, Sirach 12 and 10, it says, never trust thine enemy, for like as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. And Esau, he's known as the border of wickedness, so that's why you can never trust him. It says, though he humble himself and go crouching, yet take good heed and beware of him, and thou shalt be unto him as if thou hast wiped a looking glass, and thou shalt know that his rust have not been altogether wiped away. Set him not by thee, lest when he have overthrown thee, he stand up in thy place. And that was what Haman was looking to do to Xerxes. But guess who saved the day? Guess who, you know, who saved Xerxes from that happening? Mordecai, you know, through Esther. And that's why we have that book to honor the memory of what took place, where an enemy tried to basically have us thrown in a pit, only for him to be thrown in that same pit that he digged. And we celebrated from then on out. All right, we celebrate Purim. So it says, neither let him sit at thy right hand, lest he seek to take thy seat, and thou at the last remember my words and be pricked therewith. And that's why eventually Haman's relatives, they ended up slowly taking over Macedonia, and then that's when they rose up into power. Darius ended up getting smitten, and then next thing you know, the Greeks came into power, and that's going back to the vision that Daniel saw. It talks about the thigh of brass. That's dealing with the Greeks, or also known as the leopard. When you read the four beasts, that leopard represented Alexander raising into power, and basically the Greeks becoming the new dominion. Also in Daniel 8, it talks about the rough he-goat. That's representative of the start of the Greeks, and that was when Esau actually rose in. It wasn't actually Japheth. It was Esau. Okay. So basically, if you did your research, you would be able to trace Alexander the Great, his father, all the way back to Amalek. All right, because when you read Esther, and this is how brothers was able to make that link. Which chapter was it? Where it refers to Haman as a Macedonian. Bear with me while I look for it. All right, let me check the next chapter. It could be here. Here it is, 16. Additions of Esther, or to Esther 16 and verse 10. It says, for Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amadatha, being indeed a stranger from the Persian blood. He wasn't of the Persian stock. All right, he wasn't an Elamite. He was an Amalekite. All right. And far distant from our goodness, and as a stranger received of us, has so far forth obtained the favor that we shew toward every nation, as that he was called our father and was continually honored of all the next person unto the king. But he, not bearing his great dignity, went about to deprive us of our kingdom and life, having by manifold and cunning deceits. And that shows you the nature of this serpent. He's very cunning by his nature. All right, it says, sought of us the destruction, as well as Mordecai, who saved our life and continually procured our good, as also of blameless Esther, partaker of our kingdom with our whole nation. For by these means he thought, finding us destitute of friends, to have translated the kingdom of the Persians to the Macedonians. See that? So that's the connector. So this notion that Esau is or the so-called white man is Japheth, just because they rose into power in Europe, that doesn't mean that they're actually descendants of Japheth. Esau then colonized everywhere, and he have you thinking that he's everybody. All right. He's not the original Australian. We know what he did down there in Australia. The Brits Okay. South Africa, we know what the Dutch did down there. That's not their original land. We know what he did over here in the Americas. So it tells you that, you know, this beast was going to come and dominate the earth. Who would that happen to be? It's definitely not Japheth. Japheth ain't ruled in over a 1,000 years, man. It's like you're over shit, almost 3,000 years. Salakia. And they ruled for a short period of time. And then the Persians took over. And then you connect how Esau is, he would identify as the eagle. What nation goes by the symbolism of the eagle? So it's not really hard to you know, understand this. But that just shows you that the Lord ain't dealing with these guys, man. So spiritually, they are retarded. They're retards, man. They don't have the true understanding. They don't have the breath. They have the sinews. They have, you know, the flesh. They know that they're Israelites, but they definitely don't have the breath. That same dude, Dalton, this guy's sitting on a platform saying that we didn't cross over the Gulf of Suez. We crossed on to the other side over the Nile River, going into Africa. Like, what? Are you serious? So the wilderness is in Africa. It was not in the Sinai Peninsula. So he's not going by what the scriptures reference. All right, and the geographical locations and the timelines that the Bible gives, he ain't even going by that. So if Jake want to listen to these type of individuals, hey, you know, but they're not gonna, the elect are not gonna be deceived. That's just all I'm gonna say. The elect won't be deceived, man. All right. So I'm gonna stop right there. But I want to make a point, and this is just in response to the lesson that was done. I think the elder Apostle Tahar also did his response. I didn't get to catch that, but I'll probably go ahead and try to view it, you know, when I get off of work. But yeah, you know, we dealt with that dude before, that Ron Dalton guy. You know, we didn't dealt with him before, man. All right, he's not on no level like that. You know, he just considered an intelligent dude. You know, that, and you know, he didn't read a few books and did some research on certain things, but you know, he ain't really got it like that. You know, he became, you know, a bit more famous because Kyrie Irving a few years ago endorsed his documentary, in which he goes off on that documentary. All right, because that dude is he's not a true prophet of Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. All right. So anyway, I just want to go into that, and Lord willing, Yahweh edify them, give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai. And to the next lesson, Shalom.